day can't be over. Not yet. He scowled into the distance as if the sun exiting the sky was a personal offense. Don't you think it should be longer? Yeah, it felt long enough to me. Only a shrug could express her feelings on that matter. I mean, I would have just shrugged. Cove sat up straight in defiance in the approaching darkness. I'm not gonna go home yet. I want to go somewhere. I don't know. Cove was still dripping in salt water, so you weren't sure what the alternative was. Wetsuits were fine for the beach, but not much else. It wasn't a good idea for him to lug his surfboard around to town either. You'll be real cute in that wetsuit wherever you go. Well, I need to call it a night. Yeah, I want to do something too. I'll say, yeah, I want to do something too. Cove nodded with a smile. Then he looked down the shore with wide, shining eyes. There's at least one place it's always okay to hang out in, no matter what time it is. The park. You nodded. The park was virtually always empty. Even Elizabeth only went over there nowadays if she was looking for you. How times have changed. She used to be so protective of the place. In fact, the only person there was a chance of running into. The only person there was a chance of running into might be that Jeremy kid again. Ugh. No way. You brought the idea up to Cove, and he cringed. But I'm still going. The sun is still there, a little. I'm staying out as long as it is. Sure, I'll tag along. Okay, let's go. I figured I wasn't really hanging out with him in the ocean. Might as well hang out with him in the park. Cove took a minute to put his stuff in order. He made sure to get it all, though it didn't take much care to shake the sand off. You dealt with your own things. You stuffed everything together quickly. You took your time to pack your bag. I'm more of a take my time. The two of you finished about the same time. He led the way down the beach to the park. It wasn't far, so it didn't take you long at all. The sun still hadn't completely disappeared just yet when you made your arrival. Cove stuck his surfboard upright in the sand and tossed his towel over top. By now, Cove looked mostly dry. The summer breeze on your skin kept you pleasantly warm. Cove idly went over to the monkey bars. He grabbed them, feet flat on the ground, and pretended to go across. He had definitely grown in the past few years. You had also outgrown the monkey bars. You were way too tall to play on them properly anymore. When he got to a bar in the middle, Cove pulled himself up and through, then sat on top of the bars. His legs dangled off the side of the bar he perched on. You joined him on the monkey bars. You stood in the bar. You took a seat on the swing. I'm more of a swing person than a monkey bars person. You sat right down on a free seat and started swinging your legs, first slowly, but then you added more power to your kicks. Air rushed past your face and ruffled your hair. You built up enough momentum to let it carry you. It was a lazy arc, not high or fast. Perfect for having a conversation. Guess what? He smiled broadly and raised an eyebrow. He's not here. Right, it was true. There wasn't a single sign of Jeremy. Looks like this was just going to be the two of you tonight. Cove hung his head and groaned dramatically. Your eyes widened when he whipped his head back up.
No way.
I can't believe how dumb my parents are for forcing me to come to this stupid place. You were taken aback and blinked for a second before you realized he was quoting Jeremy. Oh, I was like, what? Haha, don't scare me like that. One Jeremy is enough. That's not really nice. Funny, but nice. You don't have to tease him. Ugh, parents don't know anything. That's funny. Don't scare me like that. One Jeremy is... Ugh! Parents don't know anything. Cove chuckled back at you, amused. You looked around. The old park, the streets you knew like the back of your hand, and the beach. These were your stomping grounds. You wondered how Cove actually felt. How much was this joke just a joke, and how much was sincere dislike of this place. Moving had never been his choice. Do you actually like this neighborhood? I know you don't think it's dumb. You let the silence stretch between the two of you. Do you actually like this neighborhood? Do you really have to ask that, Vaughn? Cove kicked his legs carelessly as they dangled. He smiled softly. I like it here, I really do. It's a nice place. He didn't hesitate. There was no uncertainty. That was his genuine opinion. Yeah, I like it too. Well, at least one person likes it here. You nodded wordlessly. Well, of course, I'm here after all. I feel like Vaughn being here is a huge part of why Cove likes this place as well. You're the best thing in the neighborhood, Cove. You nodded I'll nod wordlessly. A contented feeling fell between the two of you. It didn't take long for the day to finally draw to a close. The sun was gone and it was dark. You chatted a while longer, but it was definitely winding down. We better get home. I wish days were longer. You chose not to say anything. We better get home. Already? He seemed to just notice how dark it was. It was hard to make out his exact expression with his face in shadow. I guess I lost track of time. Cove sighed. It was time to go home. He hopped down from the monkey bars with a thump when his feet hit the ground. You stopped moving your legs and stood when the swing slowed down. The chains rattled and the swing smacked into you a bit, its energy not entirely spent. Cove grabbed his surfboard and threw his towel around his neck. With his water bottle in hand, he was ready. You both began your trek up the road. It was a quiet night and you didn't run into anyone else. In what felt like no time at all, you had reached your street. As you walked, Cove smiled to himself. It was a soft expression and you couldn't help but wonder what put it there. Everything okay? I just remember when we were younger, it used to be such a big deal to come home after dark. You could indeed recall. If you got sandy, your parents would have something to say. If you got wet, your parents would have more to say. And if you came home after dark, well, your mom's and his dad better have said it was okay beforehand. You used to need permission for everything. That small comment he made exposed just how much freedom you really had this summer. Cove looked up into the sky, a smile still on his face as the two of you walked side by side, reminiscing. When you came to your house, you turned to each other. Thanks for today, Vaughn. Bye. It was nice seeing you. This is definitely an interesting experience. Yup. Thanks for an awesome day. I'm gonna say, it was nice seeing you. Cove waved and you both turned around to your respective houses. This is a pleasant end to the outing, you thought. Cool. That was short and sweet. That was, I think, a part of the reason why it was shorter was because I didn't actually go surfing with Cove. So I'm sure it would have been a much more involved scene if that was the case. But, you know, again, it's... I was going to say, for a moment that's called Wave, there really wasn't much about waves other than Cove was surfing around them. But, again, it's because I wasn't actually, like, surfing with him, which is fine. It is kind of cool that different moments are longer or shorter depending on what your choices are, and that's fine. That's perfectly cool. Sweet. So we have officially gone through all of the moments, and I'm ready to say summer ended. Move on to the next step. Yep. This is exciting! There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Tomorrow you're heading to class. You were excited to go back. Anxiety gnawed at your stomach. It was a bummer. Your feelings were muddled. I mean... Part of me was always excited about going to school. I would say I'm excited to go back. I really do genuinely like school. I tend to miss my friends as well from school, so... I'm gonna say you were excited to go back. Though summer had been fun, you had taken your fill, and now you were longing for fresh excitement. A new school year was full of potential. You got dressed, not envisaging the day before you. I'm envisaging. I actually don't know what that word means, but contemplating what lay ahead of you tomorrow. Life was sure going to be different. You had come to think of the summer vacation as the norm. But school stretched out for the majority of the year, whereas the summer vacation was just a break in the middle. So rather than it being different, it was kind of a return to the normal. What did your normal life really mean? You considered how fondly your moms talked about their summer vacations as kids. You dimly recognized that one year the pattern of school and summer itself would be over for good. It was hard to imagine. Yeah, I do. Part of me does kind of miss the school year, then summer vacation, school year, then summer vacation, rinse and repeat. And, the anticipation of going up a new grade each year and how things are a little bit different with each new grade, new classes, new teachers. There was always something like, enticingly fresh and new. And, yeah, changes happen when you are in the real world, when you grow up and you start going to work, but it's not to that same it's not the same. It's not to that same degree. It's not at the same level. It's not at that consistent, you know, rhythm, I suppose. So, if you're not careful, jobs and work can get pretty monotonous and old really quickly if you're not able to keep things nice and fresh. Which is why I really love the job that I'm at, because every 6 months to a year, we have the ability, if we want to shift teams around, work on something different, a totally different project, work with different people. And I think that's one of the keys to keeping your life at work as fun and fresh or enjoyable and engaging as possible if you are in a type of job or occupation that allows you to do that. So not everybody is lucky to be in that position. I recognize I'm one of the very fortunate lucky ones. You've gotten distracted, one arm still out of the sleeve. You pulled it through and put your mind back to the present. This season had brought about plenty of changes of its own, like Kyra's visit, though that too was coming to an end today. You were happy you'd finally gotten the chance to know her. You had become extremely fond of her. You didn't really like her. Your mind wasn't made up on how you felt about her. You didn't care one way or another. I would like to think over the course of the summer I would have been extremely fond to her. I agree. I tend to get attached to people very quickly and very easily, especially at that age. The neighborhood was about to feel a lot emptier. You finished dressing, which was good. Cove would be there any moment. You'd agreed to see his mom off together. Officially, the plan was that he would come over to bring you round to his house when he was ready to set off, but you both knew that you'd be hanging out for at least a little while beforehand. Kyra's visit had troubled Cove when it first happened. It had been a sudden change, thanks to Mr. Holden's infamous tendency to surprise people, but once he was able to adjust, he'd been in pretty good spirits with her around. It was a relief for everyone. You turned to your desk, where the box contained your accessories resided. You'd gone out and bought an anklet. Oh, because of Cove. You had gone out and bought several anklets. Accessory reminded you of that anklet conversation. You still didn't have any yourself. This is really cool that they added this, and I'm wondering how this choice would have presented itself, if at all, if I did not even do that one scene about the anklet. You've gone out and bought an anklet. I don't know if I would have bought multiples, but I would have bought an anklet. Your eyes bored to the box. Should you wear it for Cove's visit today? You put one anklet bracelet on. Sure. Your heart pounded as you slipped the hoop through the clasp and fastened it in place. Would Cove spot it? Your face grew hot as you imagined how he might react. The next thought that crossed your mind was, it would only be polite to go to get the door for Cove. You went downstairs to wait. You couldn't wait to see Cove, so you went downstairs to meet him when he arrived. Cove knew your house well enough. You could lounge in your room and wait for him. It would only be polite to get the door for Cove. You went downstairs to wait. Yeah, I'll say, yeah. You strolled down the stairs. Someone else might be able to answer it, but he was your guest. It was only a few minutes later when the doorbell rang. As you chosen to stand beside it to wait for Cove, there was no delay in pulling it open. Cove was there, just as you'd expected. Seeing you, he flashed you a bright grin. Hi, Vaughn. Hi, Cove. Come on in. Once you stepped inside, you beckoned for him to follow you upstairs. Back in your room, you sat down on your bed and waited for Cove to settle in as you knew he would. With other guests, you might have offered them a seat, but you and Cove were long past those tentative stages of friendship. Your room was as familiar to him as his own. You watched as Cove sat down in your desk chair, his preferred spot. He rolled it closer to the bed to make it easier to chat, tweaking the angle so that he was facing you fully. Once happy with the position, he leaned in towards you, hands held in his lap. His actions weren't the ones of someone who planned on moving from his spot anytime soon, even though you had an appointment to keep together that day. When is your mom leaving?
Don't worry about it.
We've got some time. She still got a shower and stuff before she goes. She didn't want me to just keep hanging around while she was doing that. He lifted his head, his gaze drifting out through the window, and chuckled. I can't believe she's already leaving, just when I'm getting used to her being there every day. He leaned back in the chair, a wry smile tickling his cheeks. Yeah, you nodded. She'll be back. Time's going by so fast. Time's going by so fast. He cocked his head thoughtfully before shrugging. He ran a hand through his hair before shaking his head, as if shaking off the topic like a dog whipping off water following a dip in the sea. Cove looked back to you, lips parted as if he was about to speak, but instead his eyes widened and his mouth closed into a tiny frown. Something had caught his attention. Something wrapped around where the end of your leg met your foot. He cast his eyes back up to your face, then down to your ankle and back to your face. He repeated the process once, twice more, as if struggling to hold the two items in tandem. Maybe he was weighing up whether this could be a coincidence or not. Or maybe he was just too shy to verbalize his thoughts, or was still trying to find the words, and this was the most he could manage. The attention made you feel bashful, amused, thrilled, regretful, pleased. No, I think I'd be amused, like going up and down. I'd find that amusing. It was hard not to laugh at Cove's scrambled response. You stifled your laughter with a hand clasped firmly around your mouth. Even so, you could feel the way the smile had lifted your face. On his next glance back to your face, Cove saw your expression had shifted. You watched as his bewilderment eroded into mortification as he realized that he had been caught staring. He quickly spun in the chair to face the wall instead, allowing you to glimpse the flush that had spread all the way to his ears. He twisted in his seat, wringing his hands and determinedly avoiding looking in your direction again. It seemed he'd decided against saying anything at all. Does it look good? You stayed quiet yourself. Sorry, what's the problem, Cove? I probably would just not say anything and let him... At that age, I would let him bring it up, and I wouldn't necessarily I would stay quiet myself. Cove mumbled something unintelligible as he slumped lower. With how he was hunched over, the quiet words had no chance of reaching you. You weren't going to get anything out of him in this state. You waited for him to come around before speaking again. Finally, he piped up, very softly. Did you do it because of what I said before? I mean, you know... The last few words were whispered as though they were a precious secret. The ankle bracelet. Yes. No. Maybe. I don't know what you're talking about, you shrugged. I'll say, maybe. His eyes squeezed shut. You had no idea if the answer made him feel better or more nervous. He eventually looked down at his lap, where his fingers were flexing and curling in an awkward dance of nerves. His chest rose as he breathed deep. Well, it looks good on you. Your heart skittered in your chest like a stone skipping across water. One big leap from the unexpected compliment, followed by a series of shorter ones as you absorbed the words. You beamed at him. He was looking at you again at last and returned the smile shyly. This really couldn't have worked out better, you thought. And there was nothing else he could add after that. The conversation lapsed into another comfortable lull. Cove swung his feet underneath the seat of the chair, eyes resting on you. Having him over was so nice. No matter how you spent the time, you always felt better for being in his company. You couldn't help but adore him, both as a friend and in a way that plucked at your heart, a vague yearning for more. Maybe it was because summer was almost over that your feelings were rushing in on you now, like high tide at the end of a long day. Summer was such a meaningful time for the two of you. Not only because it was when you first met, but because it was a season that you could spend almost entirely as you pleased, and you both chose to spend it together. You wanted to let Cove know how much you liked him. You didn't know completely what you felt. You were too scared to let him know. You weren't ready to admit it to Cove now. Nah! I might as well. If I had the opportunity, and if I really liked this boy, and my parents were cool with it, why wouldn't I? You wanted to let Cove... I'm not shy about that kind of stuff. You want to let Cove to know how much you liked him. Now was the time. You couldn't go another day without expressing these feelings you held. You spoke words of affection. You confessed by kissing him. Oh, I feel like by doing that would, be really upsetting for Cove, because that would just be too much all at once. You asked if you could kiss him. I feel like this would be a little bit too much for Cove all at once. So I feel like knowing Cove's personality, this would be better. You spoke words of affection. One step at a time with this boy. One step at a time. You spoke words of affection. It was best to be direct with Cove. You didn't want to leave room for ambiguity and misunderstanding at such an important moment. Cove was your friend, and you always had been friends. It meant a lot to you, but you knew deep that wasn't really all he was. Not anymore. You had to let him know. You looked directly at him. Cove. He had already been watching you, but he lifted his head attentively at the call. Your cheeks were as hot as you were standing in the midday sun. Cove raised an eyebrow. Your heart raced. The sound rang in your ears, shutting out everything else. I know you're crushing on me, and I feel the same about you. I like you, Cove. I really, really like you. I have a crush on you. You're pretty and wonderful, and the best person I know. I like you so much. It was just too difficult to get the words out, no matter how much you wanted. I mean, I would say it's between these two. But at that age, I would have probably said this. This I probably would have said if I was in high school, but in more of that middle schooly age, I have a crush on you. Cove froze in his seat, the only mention coming from his widening eyes. The only motion coming from his widening eyes. With a jolt, you realized that was literally the only thing he was doing. He hadn't taken a single breath since you uttered the words. Cove, you need to breathe. Cove might have... See, now I'm glad I didn't go for a kiss. Cove might have envied fish with their gills, but he wasn't a fish. He was a boy on land, and he needed the air to live. You really hoped he would remember this soon, before he needed to call your moms in and explain the situation. You really hoped he would remember this soon. Cove still had no response. You were starting to clamber off the bed towards him, when finally he sucked in a deep breath. Okay. Okay, was his response. That's such a Cove response. I love it. His voice cracked on the second syllable. Okay. The word at odds with his nervous appearance. His eyes were darting around, unsure of where to place them.
I don't know.
I don't know what to do now. I mean, you don't have to do anything. You could just say thank you and then leave it at that. I don't know either. You don't have to do anything. You could tell me how you feel. Calm down. You laughed. You shrugged. You don't have to do anything. Your announcement hadn't been a command, though you worry that Cove seemed to have taken it as one. Cove tensed, his breathing short and quick. His hands were gripping his knees tightly like a bird's claws around the branch in a gale, desperately clinging on to safety and stability. Yeah. Thank you for that. Before. You couldn't help but crack a slight smile at his sudden formalness. You could tell it was ridiculous, too. Sorry for being weird. It's just, I kind of thought or hoped that sometime something like this might happen with us talking about liking each other. You did? You were thinking about it before? It's been pretty obvious this entire summer, Cove, not gonna lie. He nodded ever so slightly. Your face felt a lot hotter after that. Cove brightened a little at your positive reaction, and his explanation continued. I could sort of picture how it might go, what it'd be like with you and me. But just the first part. I couldn't ever imagine anything that'd come after. And now it's actually happened. We're there. He took another deep breath, stuttering on the exhale. This makes things different. Things don't have to be different. I pretty much imagine you'd react like this. This is hard for me. Should we find a crystal ball for answers? Things don't have to be different. He gave you a wan smile. Thanks, but I don't think that'll work. I can't just forget. I definitely can't. His breathing started to level out once again, slowing to a usual steady rhythm. That's fair. He closed his eyes, drawing himself up as he inhaled deeply. Each word he spoke next was delicate. Vaughn, I like you too. A lot. Probably way too much. He ducked his head bashfully and opened an eye, peeking at you through the hair that had fallen over his face like a veil. He'd managed to smile.
Thanks for waiting for me.
You're welcome! His eyes sparkled just looking at you, his affection transparently clear. He never could hide what he was feeling, and you couldn't be more grateful for that today. You smiled at him. You hugged him. You went to kiss. Oh, I want to. I really want to, but I feel like Cove just needs... It took a lot for him to admit his feelings to us. And then, putting him in a situation where I'm pressuring him to kiss is probably just feels cruel to me. You breathed out a sigh of relief. You felt very shy. You had to laugh. I'm gonna hug him. You got up, closed the short distance between you and Cove. If I'm not gonna kiss him, I'm gonna hug him. If I'm not gonna kiss him, I'm gonna hug him. You got up, closing the short distance between you and Cove and wrapping your arms around him. Startled, Cove flinched, just as the groaning chair rolled back across the floor. He met your eyes and giggled nervously. The result of your impulsive action, it's not as impulsive as kissing him, was that Cove was confined to the computer chair. Despite that, he did his best to wind his arms around you in return. It was a little awkward, but even with the benefit of hindsight, you wouldn't have changed a thing. The strength of your feelings had demanded immediate action. It felt so nice to hold each other that way, now that everything was out in the open. Finally, you let one another go. As you straightened up, Cove rose and stood opposite of you. Cove then pressed a hand to his creased forehead.
Oh my god.
Does this mean I'm your boyfriend or something now? Should we tell our parents? I don't know what Dad or Mom would do. I think they already know. I think they knew before we did. There were a lot of concerns in there. You honed in on the simplest. There was no way your moms would let you have a boyfriend, even though that word juxtaposed with Cove's name made your heart race. My parents won't let me have a boyfriend, or even a something. It's not fair. I wish we were older. It's okay. It doesn't matter though. We like each other and that's what's important. You didn't know what to say. I wouldn't say it's not fair. I wish we were older. It's okay. I don't know what to say. The morning had been crammed so full of new developments that you were struggling to keep up with it all. Cove lifted his hand from his chest and reached towards you, halting halfway, then slowly cautiously hooking his fingers around yours. His palm pressed against the back of your hand. You let him hold your hand. You held his hand back. You rotated your hand so that you were palm to palm with Cove, your thumbs crossing one another. We can get it to work. Budding relationship, nice achievement. We always figure things out sooner or later. You're right, no matter what, it's okay in the end, when it's the two of us. Your forthright statement made Cove gasp, but the smile that followed and his tighter grip on your hand told you that he had appreciated it. Vaughn! Cove! The sudden call from downstairs caught you both unaware. You'd nearly forgotten the world outside your room. From the guilty look on his face, Cove had done the same. Just had a call. Cove's mom is ready to go. If you're quick, she might keep the mandated motherly smothering to a minimum. You doubted that, but it was nice that Mom and Mrs. Priest had their strange sense of humor in common. Your eyes met Cove's. Wordlessly, you headed downstairs together. Each step on the way was painfully slow, like he was trying to delay the inevitable. His whole body tensed leaving the house, and Cove froze altogether before you both could cross the street.
Oh.
The door's open. Dad must be taking her stuff out. He swallowed hard. She's really gonna leave. You smiled at him reassuringly. You gave his back a pat. You rested your hand on his arm. This isn't the last time you'll ever see her. You gave his back. You rested your hand on his arm. You felt a small shiver ripple through his body as the warmth from your hand sank in. Cove looked at you like he was hoping you had a solution for how he was feeling, and all you could do was give his arm a squeeze for support. At that, some of the conflict warring on his face eased a bit. Together you went across the street and inside his house, finding his parents in the living room surrounded by his mom's packed things. Hey kids. Good timing. I just called a taxi. And hi Vaughn. So glad I get to see you today. It was fabulous getting to know you this summer. I finally got to put a face to the man I've heard so many times. She winked and Cove pouted on cue over the teasing. I'm really happy I got to meet you too. I hope you had a good time visiting. Bye. You didn't say anything in response. I'm really happy I got to meet you too. Hopefully it won't be too long before we see each other again. I don't think so. Nodding, Kyra turned her attention back to her boys. She patted Cliff on the arm with this warm smile, and then she enveloped Cove in a crushing hug. Initially, Cove squirmed to break free from her grip, but his mom was unfazed and kept him locked in place. Heartbeats later, he gave in and hugged her back tightly.
I'm so glad.
And I'm so happy this trip was a success. Cliff looked like he was bursting with pride. Well, not a 100% success, but still a passing grade, I think.